he's going to ask that question and they're going to say, well, we don't have an IT strategy roadmap. And you're going to go, have you ever walked out of a discovery meeting or a sales meeting and realized I never got to ask any of my questions? Like, I just got owned in this process. A client of mine recently reached out. He was frustrated, a little anxious, and he's like, hey, I went into what I thought was a discovery, and I was meeting with the guy that initially had the inquiry. And it turned out this was a consultant that they had actually hired as a third party. I show up and I just get interviewed. I didn't do but 10% of the question asking. So I just got discovery run on me. And now if I'm a finalist, I've got to go present to multiple owners and I didn't get a chance to get all the information that I needed. What do I do? Now, this wasn't just any deal. All right. Like it was a big deal. First of all, a lot of MRR that was associated with it, but it was also sweet spot, right? Like in terms of the vertical, the industry, the size of company. So by that standard, it was like, all right, we want this account. Like it gives us more social proof in our space. And they were a pretty reputable player in the area. But more importantly, the owners of this company were a great connector to other companies for reasons that I won't get into. So there was some strategic importance to this. And now my client's supposed to show up and present blind, which runs completely counter to the process that we design, the process that we run. Like it's all based on diagnose what the problem is, understand those problems, understand the pains that are associated with them, create your solution around that diagnosis that you did so that when you deliver the prescription, they go, wow, that's tailored to our needs. Well, in this case, you don't know what the needs are. Any process that's consultative, where you've got multiple steps, when you lose control of discovery and that process gets run on you and you just turn into like an interviewee on a panel or something, then you've lost all of your leverage as a salesperson. So the question is, how do you salvage this? Now, the first thing I do is ask for the transcript, because I ask everyone that I work with on the sales side to carry some type of device, an AI device or a recorder or something that allows us to capture what is actually happening on the sales calls. And we introduce it as a note taker, just like any other Teams or Zoom call, right? And most people go, okay, cool, got it. Like everybody's accustomed to that now. So he sends me the transcript. And what I do is sit down and look at what were the questions that the consultant was asking. What can we infer about their priorities and their problems and their pains from the questions that they're asking? Because they're asking those questions for a reason, right? Like they've hired this consultant, third party. He's obviously done some work with the actual client and figured out like what the challenges are with the current provider and what their concerns are with going to another provider. And I think, safely assume that the questions they're asking are tied to what those priorities, problems, and pains are. So I start scanning the transcript. This is just detective work, right? Like this is me and my client both like looking through this and we say, what can we infer, right? Like what can we extract from this? And I found 3 really important insights, like takeaways that could guide the way that we present when we go in to do the proposal. And I have one suggestion on how to go about that when discovery's basically been run on you and you've lost control. How do you take back control when you get to the proposal stage? So that's what I'm going to share here. Now, the first real insight we could take from the questions that were being asked was they have a strong emphasis and concern about process. For all I know, the MSP that they've got today is running a shit show where they've got no SOPs and no processes. I have no idea. But they asked questions around ticketing. They ask questions around what's the onboarding process going to look like. They ask questions around what are your internal systems. They asked a couple of questions around processes with the team. And so you can look at that and you can go, hey, this business that we're talking to runs on structure and they're very process oriented themselves, and or they've been burned by a provider that doesn't. Okay, so there's been some pain that's been associated with that. And they're saying, hey, can we please make sure that the next MSP that we bring on board has their shit together in this area? So we look at that pattern, we say, what do we do with this information? All right. Now, here's what most sellers do. They answer questions and say things like, yeah, we're really process oriented. And, of course we have SOPs and yes, we have documentation. So they answer the questions and they hope that's enough. But here's my recommendation to my client. I said, we should know from the pattern of questions here that this is a priority for them. So we need to over-index in our answers and in our proposal and how we're presenting things for this. Now, what we're not going to do is go in and say, hey, we do all these processes. What we're going to do is we're going to introduce things like, hey, we run on EOS, like the entrepreneurial operating system, because they do, like that's their internal operating system, right? That's very process oriented. So highlight, well, when we use EOS and we use that to onboard our new teammates and we're documenting things and our integrator, right? So you're like using the terms that they go, okay, like they're legit, they're real about the processes. And you find opportunities to weave in your processes. So if you have a standardized onboarding process for new clients, well, if that's documented, then what I recommend, and in his case, it's already done, but what I recommend is name that process, right? Like make it something proprietary and say, you asked about the migration and the onboarding process. I just want to introduce you to our XYZ process. It's the onboarding thing that makes this as simple as 1, 2, 3, and it feels proprietary. It feels almost like IP, and you're like, okay, well, they must care about this process enough to have named it. It has more credibility when you present it as a product, right? As a framework. And even better if you can model it out, right? Like show them an illustration on one slide that says, here's the process. Find other ways to visually show what you're doing without directly saying, hey, I know this is important to you, so I brought these pictures in. Like what you're saying is, here we've got our dashboards, and this is the ticketing process. This is what they're going through. In fact, this is yesterday's screenshot of our score on such and such, or our timing on such and such. So you're just subtly moving through and saying, I have proof, right? Instead of me telling you that we're process oriented, what I'm gonna do is show you proof. And I'm gonna demonstrate that through the actual visualization, through the processes, through the frameworks, whatever it is that we can present. And we're gonna emphasize that throughout all the aspects of the presentation that we can. Now, in this case, my client is very systematized, like all the way through the business. So finding areas where we have customization, you're like, well, we've kind of intentionally created better processes and repeatability throughout the business. That's why there's not a ton of personalization, except when it comes to things like pricing, right? And packaging and exactly what's going into a certain thing. And he's intentionally designed the business based on systems, right? So there's not a ton of customization for every individual customer, right? Like by design, like that's the way that it's been built. And the idea behind that is, of course, like, hey, we're going to bring more consistency. We're going to bring more effectiveness. We're going to be better at doing it because we've got this dialed in, instead of like every time somebody comes through the door, we're like, hey, we're figuring it out from scratch, right? So makes all the sense in the world. But of course, the customer wants to know, is it tailored for us? Or are you just giving us like some, cookie cutter solution? Is it going to actually work for us? What I recommended to him was, let's look. Like, let's evaluate where here can we actually show that we do some customization. Now, the one area they could really focus on is the pricing, because the pricing isn't just a standard per user thing, right? Like it's based on margin. He has a slightly different pricing model. So it is actually tailored to that specific company. So that's an area that we get to lean into and say, see, we don't think everything is like the exact same, right? Like we don't think as a business, it's a complete template. We know that there are differences between you and your neighbor and you and a competitor, perhaps. So we actually tailor our packages and our pricing for you. That's also how you know that this is going to be the right solution for you, because we're going to make sure that the package that we're offering you is exactly what you need today and make sure that you're set for where you need to go tomorrow. So you're going to highlight the fact that pricing, it varies, right? Like there are different packages and I have different offerings at different levels and I do different things for different people. And that's the one place that I allow the customization and personalization that you're probably looking for. So let me leverage that in the proposal. So it's all about going through these things and taking the bits and pieces of your offering and making sure that that's what you emphasize. The third thing that I took from this transcript, and this was, I think, the biggest. I think this was the most important thing that he should leverage and focus on going into this. The consultant asked several times about strategy in one way or another, right? Like IT strategy. How do you determine that we're future-proofed? Something about the roadmaps. At one point asked directly about, do you offer strategic support or anything like that? And I told my client, I said, this is a big one. And here's why I think that. Not only are they asking questions about strategy, which, by the way, I think makes some of the best prospects. Like if you have a prospect that is asking you about IT strategy, chances are you have somebody that understands the importance of IT in the business and the importance of you guys being partners and aligned, and where they're at now or who they have now is not providing that. So they've even been exposed to what happens without a gap. Like that's good from a sales standpoint. Sucks for them. Here's the other thing. They hired a consultant to help them buy IT services. So whatever is going on behind the curtain over there is so not right, or they feel they lack the confidence in their own abilities to make the IT decision. So they've employed a third party, somebody else, to come in and say, hey, what we're doing today didn't work. The decision that we made before clearly didn't work. These are the problems that we're having. Can you help us find a better provider? There is more evidence that you need of a company that is basically admitting we don't have the IT experience. Like, we don't have the strategic experience and we need it. We recognize the need for it. We don't have it, and it's important to us in the next partnership. Now, the best part of this is my client requires 4 meetings a year minimum, has a virtual CIO offering. Like there's different parts of this, but strategy is a big part of what he does because he's looking for great fit clients. He wants people just like this. So I said, here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to say, hey, by the way, I noticed you asked some questions about strategy. So, hey, we're really strategic and we require meetings 4 times a year. And we have this VCIO thing. That's not what you want to do. This is a perfect example or a perfect case where you use questions to deliver your point. So instead of saying, hey, we obviously create an IT roadmap and a strategy roadmap, and we stick to that, and we kind of serve as your strategic partner and guide you through the decision as you grow and adjust those priorities. I want the prospect to know that. I want them to infer oh, okay, they care about strategy. They're good at strategy, without me as a salesperson having to say it, or without him having to say it. So here's what I coached him to say. I said, as you're going through this proposal, at some point, you're going to have some interaction. What I would recommend is that you go in and you ask a question, something along the lines of, well, hey, so I know you have a current provider and you're moving for whatever reason. We can get into that. What I would love to know is what aspects of the strategy roadmap that are in place today would you like to keep versus discard, right? Would we be doing a complete strategy overhaul from the current plan today, or are there pieces of that strategy plan that we're actually going to keep and you feel are the right direction? He's going to ask that question and they're going to say, well, we don't have an IT strategy roadmap. And you're going to go, no, you're not. But you're going to go, oh, okay. You've planted the idea that you need them to have, which is, hey, they know strategy. They care about strategy. They're going to help us and be our strategic partner without you saying it, right? You use questions to lead your prospects to the same conclusion that you want them to have without you having to tell them. It's a strategy of pulling information and pulling people to the finish line as opposed to pushing them. And I can tell you this, having coached this technique for a long time, prospects believe themselves more than they believe you. So if they come to that conclusion through questions, and that's the understanding that they have, it is going to carry more weight than you saying, hey, we're strategic and we require 4 meetings a year, or whatever it is. Now, those are the 3 kind of takeaways that we pulled from the transcript, and we said, all right, let's be strategic, which this is a part of sales I love, by the way, getting strategic, creative, positioning things the right way. But he's still going in blind, right? We've done a pretty good job. He's probably ahead of the competition. They had 10 people going up for this thing. And I'm sure he's well ahead of everybody. However, he still doesn't have the actual information for sure. So here's the last thing that I coached him on. This is the bonus. What you effectively want to say is, hey, everybody, nice to meet you. Your rapport, your handshakes, all that stuff. When you sit down, say, hey, I've got this proposal that I've created for you guys based on what I think are the challenges or the priorities that you may have. Now, candidly, I didn't have a chance to ask a lot of questions. And normally I would make sure that the information in here is really targeted to the things that you care about most. Do you mind if I spend just 10 minutes asking a few questions to make sure that what I present here is actually relevant for you, that I don't waste any of your time on stuff that you may not even care about? And what you're doing when you ask that is, one, you're taking back control. Okay, you're saying, hey, I know you're going to run this interview on me. What I'd like to do is flip the script and I would like to start asking questions, right? 2, you've actually increased your status, right? Your positioning, because instead of going in and just getting grilled you've said, can I lead this thing? And then 3, you've given yourself a chance, because 99% of the time they're going to say, yeah. Who wants their time wasted, right? And you didn't get to ask any questions. As long as you frame it as a benefit for them, most of the time they're going to say, yeah, go ahead. Like, you still have X amount of time. Like, it doesn't change your time. But now you have some time to ask questions and actually tailor the information that you're going to present to them. So you may be wondering here, what happened, Ray? Good question. So my client went from 10 candidates that were interviewed, or 10 that made it to the panel. So potentially more, right? Like, but I have no idea. But 10 went to this panel. And of that panel, they picked 2 finalists, and he was one of the 2 finalists. And then he did go ahead and win the deal. It's a sizable deal. And like I said, it's got some strategic importance. It is a great sale, like beyond just the revenue, because it does open up some other doors. And the takeaway is, as a salesperson, we never stop acting like detectives. We never stop hunting for problems. We never stop hunting for pain. We never stop trying to take control and run the process as best we can. And there are going to be limitations. There are going to be times where life, some other person, a situation says, no, you're not going to get to run it perfectly. And that's fine, right? Like, it's not going to be perfect every single time. But even when the script is flipped on you, even when the circumstances don't work out that you can run your process exactly, the fundamentals don't change, right? So in this case, he had somebody grilling him. He had somebody interviewing him. All right, well, let's work with that, right? Like, that's that we can't necessarily control that, and certainly not after the fact. But what we can do is say, how can we take control going forward? What can we infer from what we found? How can we be smart about this and make sure that we give ourselves the highest probability of a deal? And that's what we did. And that's because the best salespeople aren't robots. Like, I love a process as much as anybody else, but the best salespeople, they're detectives, right? They don't just answer questions, they ask questions. They diagnose, they double click, they're like pulling on threads. They're trying to find, different things. So the next time you feel a meeting slipping away, use some of these tactics. Like, think about it this way, reframe it, pull back control, and watch how quickly you go from just another vendor to trusted advisor. Now, I hope this has been helpful for you. If this kind of breakdown on a deal basis has been helpful at all, go ahead and tell me in the comments. Like, I have opportunities to break these deals down and try to give you some tactical, actionable advice all the time. If it's helpful, let us know. And if you're an MSP and you want access to our MSP sales toolbox, which is basically a place where I just add things almost every month, right? Like, it's, comp templates, it's forecasting tools, it's playbooks, it's scripts, templates, things like that. You can, drop in your email. You have lifetime access, including to anything that we add going forward. And there's a bunch of stuff in there already that's really valuable. So go ahead and check it out. Link for that is below, and I will see you in the next video. Adios.